Let's see what this one does. Okay. It has created a new channel. I mean, a new link altogether, but we are there. I can see it.
I can throw that link in there, or you can throw it into the other page if you have it.
Yeah.
If you throw it to me, I'll put it in there right now.
Get this to you.
Are you sending it to me in my messenger? Oh, here. Perfect.
Yeah.
Got it.
And in case you're wondering, folks, we're late because nothing works on my end.
It must be the Ouija boards in my background. That's what
It
I'm
could
thinking.
be. I had everything set up nicely, as you saw, Karen. Ouija
Yes.
boards all over the place. I had a nice countdown. Everything worked the last week. Today, nothing.
That's how it goes sometimes. It's just how it goes.
Now I've got my Earl Grey tea with me. I love Earl Grey tea.
Wonderful.
Now let's see if we can get people to hop over onto this other place. Anyway, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
I'm putting on I'm actually turning on the handheld recorder too, just in case. Good morning, good evening, and welcome to the Mysterious Matters program. I am the curator of mysteries. I'm Bob Bain. And welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us this evening is Karen A. Dahlman. And yeah, hey, Karen.
Hey,
And
Bob. Great to be back with you.
it's great to have you here with us. The last time, as I mentioned before, the last time we had you on was back in 2015. We did two shows back in those days,
Wow.
2 hours each. So we definitely enjoyed it. At some point, actually, I think I may know what happened. My father died in May, and a bunch of other stuff happened. In 2018, I essentially just stopped doing shows for the most part. Um, Losing a lot of loved ones as I did. I lost a little girl who was like a daughter to me in 2013, my dad in 2015. The little girl's mother also committed suicide in 2016 on Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So a lot of things have happened since then.
You
But
definitely needed a break for sure.
I definitely needed that
That's a
break.
lot.
Um, I, I I kept trying to come back. I kept trying to come back because I wanted to see if the passion was there. I still wanted to do these shows,
Mhm.
but inside I felt empty. I mean, let's be honest. I felt like my world had shattered. But tonight we're going to talk about the Ouija board. And I'm just going to go by this just like I know absolutely nothing about the Ouija besides for the fact that it is a potential conjuring device for communicating with spiritual beings. So, when did you first come across the Ouija board?
Well, in history, the idea of a talking board first came out in the market, and well, it was being made, but it wasn't really sold like everywhere yet. But in 1886, because there started to be people around the country were doing this grassroots movement and writing letters and numbers on their cutting boards, on their table, and they were beginning to spell out and get messages. But around that exact same time, a company called the W.S. Reed Company, a toy manufacturer, created the first talking board, and it was called the Witchboard. And we know about that board because it was actually sent to Grover Cleveland when he got married in the White House. And how we know this is because back in the day, when things would go viral, they would have to be sent to some kind of journal or periodical or newspaper. And they sent a letter to President Grover Cleveland and congratulated him on getting married, but also sent this really unique device called the Witchboard, which looked a lot like a Ouija board, but it had different images on it, and it had a planchette as well, one of the indicators that moves around. But what happened was they took that letter and put a copy also in the Boston Globe. And so that went viral. So President Grover Cleveland wrote a letter back and said, "Dear sirs, we thank you for your ingenuity and creative spirit, but I hardly think I'll be using it to consult the task of the government," something to that nature. And they took that letter and also put it in the Globe, and it went viral again. So that's when we first saw a spirit board, talking board hit the scene. Now, it wasn't until 1890 when a group of business investors got together, and that's when they developed the Ouija board. And it was named and patented and trademarked in 1891. And behind me, what you're seeing is a bunch of Ouija boards, mostly. The blue board is not a Ouija board. That's a homemade board somebody had created for me. But all the rest you're seeing around me are Ouija boards.
Ah, now there was a Ouija board I was looking at before the show started, and there goes my fountain pen.
Uh-oh, we got all kinds of problems tonight.
Hey, all types of problems. And anyway, that's the good type. But I was looking at a Ouija board, a particular one. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it is a serial killer Ouija board.
I have one.
You actually have one of those.
I do. It's called Bob's board, right?
I don't know, but it's done with grave dirt, some dirt, let's say grave dirt, blood, and some particles of a serial killer's clothing, such as Ted Bundy, etc.
Okay, that's different. Mine is mass produced. It was made by a relative of a supposed serial killer. We don't know who the person's name is. We don't know if it's really real or not. But this board is called Bob's board, and it is mass produced and marketed. Where what you might have seen was that a handmade board.
I sent you the link if you want to take a look at that. I don't know how to actually bring that up.
That's yeah. Let me look at this, and I can get, okay, so cereal. All right. Okay. So yeah, this looks like somebody made this. So what I'm seeing is, so people can understand, is this has a red background to it, and there's faces of, it looks like people that are kind of bloody. Maybe they could be the victims or something. But I see what it is. They're the actual serial killers themselves in each corner: Ramirez, Bundy, Guine, and Schaefer. I recognize Ted Bundy on there's picture. And they said they have dirt and fibers from those 4 people. It's definitely one of a kind, homemade board. It looks like.
If a person were to use this, trying to communicate with spirits, would this be something that you would be okay with or against? Because we're talking about serial killers and actual articles of clothing or whatever that belong to these serial killers, plus grave dirt.
Right. Well, okay, so everybody has their own belief system about this kind of thing. For me, the board is just a board. In terms of, any board I have, I will get the same results on any board. And of course, the serial killer board I have, which is, it's way up here on the wall. You can't see it around me. I have 33 boards on the wall. There's layers up, one down one wall, and there's layers going up this wall over here. Really neat, a shelving system I designed and had built recently. But the board over here, I can use it, and I will still get the same spiritual guides that I work with every time, because it has nothing to do with the board for me. It has to do with the energy. I'm just using it. I'm the operator of this tool, and it's actually me doing the channeling. The board does nothing. Now, other people have different beliefs. So for them, they may, get a different kind of response, not because of the board, but because of their own beliefs surrounding that board. And if they think they've got these fibers and they've got the dirt from the graves, and they got these serial killer faces on there, that will probably influence them to believe a certain thing, and therefore get different results. I look at a board and I just see artwork. Even the serial killer board, I look at it and I go, oh, the person who's creating this is a pretty good artist. They could draw some pretty good faces. So I would look at it that way. And if I had one, I'd put it in my collection and have it on my walls. Because for me, it's going to do nothing, even with the dirt, even with the stuff in it. Because for me, again, it's what I believe and what I perceive and how I use this tool. And that's going to take me to any level of use with any of these boards. I mean, I've got some spooky boards up here. People have made me, I have a board made out of coffin rails. embalming table rails and embalming
Hmm.
table. I have a board that was made by a person who later committed suicide. I've got all different kinds of boards and they come from different places and they all work the same for me. So you're talking to somebody who's been doing this, get this now, 49 years I've been using this tool and I've just developed the ability to channel. It's really no different than me doing automatic writing, voice channeling, or using some other kind of divination tool.
Yes. Now, in your years of collecting or your years of seeing all sorts of Ouija boards, there's one I'm thinking of right now that might actually exist. I've had an individual on, and he's coming back on soon, but he talks about collectors of the macabre. And
Mhm.
one of the things we discussed at some point are there are people out there who collect skin tattoos of the deceased.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen a Ouija board that's made up of, say, there's a Ouija board skin tattoo? Someone takes that and makes it onto the board. Have you ever seen anything like that
I've
before?
never seen anything with human body parts on the board, if that's what you're asking me, whether it's
Yeah,
skin.
skin.
I've never seen that, but I've definitely seen boards that are of all different shapes and sizes and different kinds of makeup to them. And I've seen boards with blood on them, literal real blood. I've seen
Hmm.
boards with attachments, like when I say attachments, they might put a crystal embedded in it, some kind of sigil or that kind of thing. I've seen others, the sky's unlimited when you start creating boards. And people are going to tend to, if you create boards, you're going to tend to make things that you resonate with or that you like. So I can see people maybe doing that. For me, you really need to have a flat surface and it needs to be smooth for it to move with ease. So I think about that. That's why most of them are made, as you look behind me, a few are wooden and the rest are like compressed particle boards with a sticker on them.
Yeah.
These two have stickers on it, which make them smooth. This one just has a lot of shellac on it. And these at one time did too, varnish on them. So that makes them smooth. So I would think if you start putting too many things on top of it, it's going to be bumpy.
Yeah. I love your background. The only background I have is a bookcase with He-Man, Skeletor, a clock, and a green screen. I also have
I saw your books though on the shelf. I see Ghost, the Hans Holzer book. Oh,
this, which is I guess you can call it a Ouija board.
cool. You just put some letters and numbers on that, and that becomes a Ouija board.
I can conjure Frankenstein or somebody,
Hey, why not?
Mary Shelley.
Give it, why not? Give it a shot. Some people do talk to famous people. I've spoken to a few. That's really not my focus. And we've talked about this before. My focus is more about working this tool to look into spiritual insights and gain wisdom and inspiration, or sometimes speak to the deceased. So there's some kind of a sense of I don't know. A lot of people have grief around that, like you were talking about earlier, how your life
Yes.
shattered. So I would use it for helping people on those levels.
Yes, I remember it was so many years ago. So many years ago. I'm old now.
Getting up there, aren't we
I
all?
am. Oh me. Anyway, I remember back in those days, you were telling me it's the power of intent.
It is.
Whatever a person is intending that they're whatever on their mind or their emotional state when they're coming to the Ouija board, that is the type of energy that they're going to draw toward them. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correct?
You're remembering it very well. Yes, that is correct. It's always based upon your intentions and your focus. So you look at what's my desire when I use this tool? What is it I'm desiring to do? And that becomes part of your intentions. Now, there's a whole unconscious thing that happens. So we don't often think about this when we're doing any kind of work in the unseen dimensions. And we don't even think about it when we're moving about our own life. Now this part I'm talking about is your own filters, your own belief system, the way you perceive and see the world. That will always come into play within your life, how your day goes, how you respond to certain situations or react to certain situations in your life. And that will also affect how your communication works with this tool and what kinds of communication you'll have. So when I teach to use people how to use the board, I really ask them to look at what are they harboring within. And then I like to find out a little bit about their background, their beliefs about the board, their beliefs about life. Do you think it's even possible to reach a spirit guide or a deceased loved one? Do you think it's possible to speak to animals? Have you ever? And so you start seeing people's limitations by, they may say, well, no, that's silly. You can't talk to animals on the board. Or they may say, it's only for dead people. You can't, spirit guides don't exist. Then you start to see people's limitations. And therefore, they most likely will not reach that through this communication device. Now, really,
Mm.
basically, it's a phone. I consider this a phone. It's my cosmic phone. You dial
Ah,
up the frequency of what you want to communicate with. And I do it through many different ways. But most importantly is I have the belief system that I can talk to, for example, an animal. It could be a dead transitioned animal, or it could be an animal that's alive. I believe I can talk to my spirit guides, and therefore I get that back. I receive that. I'm able to match the frequency by dialing it up by my thoughts and my intentions and what I want to experience. And that's how I dial up the frequency to match that which I'm trying to communicate or commune with.
yes. And I remember in your book, you had said, well, maybe both of your books, you had said that you had actually reached out to your guides
Mhm.
to write these books.
That's right.
Of course, they were like, one of them was like, don't mention my name, don't mention
You
Ouija,
remember
but you
that?
mentioned Ouija anyway.
It was this, it was my very first book, this one, The Spirit of Creativity. I wrote this in actually 97. It wasn't published till 2012. And
Wow.
it was all about ways to co-create your life. Kind of the things I'm talking about. It's very spiritual, but not religious, and not just about being an artist. It's about how do you work within your life to create the best life you want. Interesting enough, every chapter was read over, and I would say the guides that I work with were acting like they were my agents or my editors. It would say, you need to go deeper. You need to add this part. Did you forget about this? And they kind of give me an outline, and then I'm supposed to come back and write. And they would read through it and say, okay, change that, move this around. It was incredible. But they did say you're not supposed to mention them in this book. They told me that because when I was going to get it published back in 97, 98, they said I was a practicing psychotherapist. They said it's gonna not sit well with the work you're doing and how people see you because you're using a Ouija board. I mean, there's such a stigma about it. But in the
Yes.
other books, I'm very open, about my work with the Ouija board, because people were saying, well, I want to know now how you got this information. So that's when I started writing the other two books, this one really talks about how to use the Ouija board and 40 years of my experience. Here I'm 9 years later. And then this one talks really about meeting your spirit guides or communicating directly with source energy, wisdom, and your higher self, and really how to improve your life by bringing in this inspiration and guidance and wisdom. And they downloaded to me in the middle of the night, and so much information came from them. And I read this book and I go, I wrote what? I've read it like 10 or 12 times already. And I still go, I don't remember writing that. It's crazy. So yeah, I try to use the board, which I endeavored to do since 1986. For 13 years, I just thought you talked to the deceased with it. But it was in 1986, I had a major turning point that made me realize I could use it for, wisdom and inspiration and guidance, and just talking to my spirit guides makes everybody's life a little easier.
Now, when you're speaking to these spirits, have you found that they are all knowing, or are they limited in what they actually do know?
It
As
depends.
far, you know,
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends on who you're talking to. So let's say you're talking to a transition person, which means a deceased person. You don't really ever die. So that's why I have a hard time saying die, dead. We might leave this dimension, and for our purposes, we think they're gone for good. They're not. Their energy, their information, their spiritual self is still around. We just can't always see it or touch it or feel it. But they're still very present. And so the deceased people that I do talk to, they're going to be limited by their experiences. So they're going to be limited by who they were in life, but also who and how their soul has been evolving. So somebody will transition, have a lot more knowledge if they choose to accept it and use it than they would when they were alive. But they're not all knowing. It's like that's an evolution. We're not all knowing. I mean, even here and there, they're not. However, you start talking to some guides that have been spent many, many years. Maybe they never even been born on Earth, or they spent enough lifetimes on Earth and now they evolved to another level where they don't want to come back to this dimension. They're going to have a little more information. So the group of beings that I met in 1994, and I met them via the board. It's when they first started appearing. And these beings I just call now the guides. I used to call them the sun and moon because that's where they enter the board. They'd come in, and there was two of them that were more predominant, and one felt more feminine in nature. The other one felt more masculine. And why I say that is because of how they spoke. So the sun was definitely more masculine, came through very directly, very short sentences to the point. The moon, which is a feminine symbol, it definitely felt more flowy, flowery, verbose language. And she does do a lot of writing in my books because of her descriptive way of speaking. But when I realized when they came in, they didn't have names. They're really androgynous beings. They're genderless, sexless. We'll put it that way. They aren't humans. They're a frequency of a vibration, but it's a light form, and they have a consciousness. And they have the ability to communicate. And do they make sounds? No, but they are of light. Now, I've never seen them, and I do see spirits every now and then. And we don't even have the apparatus in which to see these beings because they're such pure light. And their frequency is very, very high. It took me since 73 to 94, about 21 years to finally reach them. And when I met them, and they're with me now, and I can hear them a lot of times. I will use them when I do my readings for people. They'll channel directly through me. They come to the board every time. They have a sense of all-knowingness. People ask them questions and they have an answer. Now, will they always give us the full answer? Not necessarily. And the reason why is because they come to help people, to guide people, not to lead them and not to tell them what to think or how to be, but they'll definitely give inspiration to people in words of wisdom so people can begin to understand what they're supposed to learn on their own. The key thing about spirit guides, and these guides included, and spirit guides that are maybe at a different level, they are all like angels or something like that. They're all here to help us. This is what they like to tell me. They said, we're like your coach. We're like your coach on the side of the football field. You're the player in the field, passing the ball, running with it, and blocking, and sometimes running interference and kicking your goals. They said, but guess what? They said, we're going to be your coaches or your cheerleaders. We're not going to tell you how to live your life. We'll give you some suggestions, but we're not going to live it for you. So that's why these guides will never give you all the information. But I got to tell you, Bob, having said that, I've had many sessions, or I've done some experiments with the board, or people come to my sessions or used to come to me for readings on the board. They would say some things that I'm just like, it blow me away. Like, how the heck do they know that? And I don't know that stuff, but they do. And so they say things to people that are very meaningful that there's no way I would have known that at all. So it's really interesting. When we do this work, and I would be really clear with people that are listening and really trying to explore with the Ouija board, never give your power over to somebody else or something else, whether it's your spirit guides, and real spirit guides won't take it, that they'd be like, nope, I'm not going to take that. Or even the messages you get. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work on the board. I have many miles under the on the planchette on the board before I start realizing and paying attention to the messages, because it does take time to develop your skill. It's not necessarily the beings you're talking to, it's really yourself and where you're blocking the messages coming through, or your beliefs about it that will stop you. So if you see this as a toy, you're most likely going to get frivolous answers. If you immediately run out and go do something you learned on the board, you're going to be met with again, frivolous answers, frivolous quest, because it doesn't work that way. They're not going to tell you how to live life, and they're not going to give you all that information. And I always say, never trust the messages or the accuracy of the messages until you've been doing it for many, many months, years, a long time, where you have consistent practice.
Many seconds.
Yeah. I get people write me and they said, hey, I just pulled the Ouija out of the box.
I'm an expert.
It's not working. Or I got this message where the gold's buried. I go, all right. You're just playing around with yourself. It's trickster energy, and you're attracting it. You got to be really careful about that stuff.
I've got to ask you, are you a paranormal? Let's just say, are you a paranormal investigator?
Yes.
Have you ever used the Ouija board at a known haunted site?
All the time. In fact,
all the time.
And I'm going to one in the UK next week. It's called Coombe Abbey, located in Covington. England. And we're going to be, the Coombe Abbey is super old, like hundreds and hundreds of years old, and it's haunted. So this is my third time there, but we always get really cool EVPs. We've gotten some good messages. So yeah, I just got back from another paranormal convention, and it was at Belgrove Plantation in Virginia. And oh my gosh, that place is active. A lot of stuff on the Ouija board, but also EVPs and some other techniques we were using. But yeah, that's the tool. This is my tool. My tool is the board. And then I also use myself, because I will hear things, I will feel things, and I'll see things. So yeah, this is always with me when I do my investigations.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if anyone has ever before utilized the Ouija board at a known haunted site or a graveyard. If I was brave enough, I would just go to a graveyard. I've picked up EVPs before in graveyards, in my own house, other places. So if I was brave enough, I would probably try and use the Ouija board, but I'm not. I am a chicken.
You are not?
I am a chicken, I'm telling you.
Oh, I thought the last time we talked, what we decided was 7 years ago. Holy cow.
Oh, yes. We actually talked about on Halloween night to do tried to do something digital or whatever it was back in those days. I'm old. My memory's gone. You know, I used to be fresh faced. Now I've got fur on my face. I'm turning into a werewolf or something. I don't know.
Oh goodness. Well, again, this what we all have in common is the aging process and death. Oh, and being born. So we have those things in common with everybody. We all are going to eventually pass. So
we're all crazy.
We look at our mortality as we start getting older. You're starting to think about those things. And so for me, I mean, I have some packs with different people, close friends of mine and family members who have transitioned, and they do come back and talk to me on the board. Yeah.
Yeah. That is, talking about mortality, your own mortality. That was not something I ever actually thought about or faced until I lost a parent.
Exactly.
To me, I mean, I lost a little girl I helped to raise, but that didn't really make me face my own mortality. When my own flesh and blood had died, my father, it's like, damn, I'm not young anymore.
Yeah. You're stepping into his shoes and filling that space now. And no, it's difficult for people to talk about death and that's the thing about the Ouija board, which really brings up this mysticism or enigmatic approach to, or mysteriousness about it, because it supposedly deals with death and communicating with those who have gone, have left us. We were talking about earlier.
Transitioned, yes.
I like that word, transition, better. Yeah, as they tell me, they say we're not really dead. We're just existing in a light form body now. So it brings us to the point of having to deal with death. And so I think a lot of people with the Ouija board, it scares them on that level, because it is about, it was originally created for that purpose. That's not how it can be used, but that's how it was originally used. And so people always think with Ouija boards, oh, death. And then the other thing is demons and witchcraft. But people forget that a lot of some really famous writings were created on the Ouija board, or these beings that came through and gave great writings, such as Seth from Jane Roberts started with the Ouija board. James Merrill, the poet, American poet and award-winning poet, wrote lots of his poetry with the help of the Ouija board and a muse that he had. There's so many people out there that have used this tool in other ways to inspire them to write. I use it to write. I use it for inspiration. I use it for guidance. I use it for if I'm looking for an idea or I'm stuck. I get great ideas from my spirit team.
Yes, and I got this from your book, The Creator of Alcoholics Anonymous. Got Bill
Wilson.
Yes.
Bill Wilson, who started that. You're absolutely, thank you for remembering that. Absolutely. He used the board to get his steps. There's so many things you can do with the board now. And so a lot of people just have that misinterpretation that it's just for the dead when it can be used to talk to spirit guides or a muse or or my higher self. I spent 4 years doing that, 89 through 93, with two of my friends, and we just spoke with our higher self, which means that part of me that's greater and exists beyond this corporeal physical experience, which has knowledge, which has much more knowledge and we can even tap into. And so when I do talk to my higher self, I tend to get a lot of downloads of information, and it's brilliant. I'm thinking, I don't normally think like that, but it's brilliant. So you can use this tool again as a cosmic phone, as I mentioned earlier, to dial up these different frequencies. So when people start to realize that and they go, oh, the Ouija board is just, that's just a board. Some of it's just cardboard nowadays, or plastic, or laminated compressed particle board, like I mentioned. They start realizing, oh, I'm the one that's really changing my frequency to match those beings and communicate. Yeah, that's when people can take away this whole mysterious nature to it and realize they're doing it. I'm doing the work. The board does nothing. I'm doing it. That's why any board can work. But you know, there is all those Ouija stitions that come along with the board, and you hear those, and that's what tends to scare people. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying they don't have any place in my life because I can use this tool for other purposes.
I used to know an older man. He's deceased now. He has transitioned, I should say, and he did something similar. It was not a Ouija board, actually. He used a coin, a silver dollar that he had with him since childhood. And he would always call out to, he would call it his invisible friend. And he would ask him questions. It was heads or tails. Sometimes it would land straight, you know, on its side.
Oh, on the ridge?
Yes.
Yeah, that's weird.
And
it's crazy.
And he told me that's how he would communicate with his invisible spirit friend.
Wow. Well, you know, that's not unlike the pendulum, because with the coin, you got two sides. The pendulum, you got yes and no. It's the same concept. So you can do any kind of communication with many different devices. Now, people will say, oh, the coin's not evil. But as soon as they see a Ouija board, they're going to say that's evil.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind, right? Or a pendulum. You're doing the same thing. That's not evil. It's a pretty crystal, but this is evil. You see?
Looks like a beautiful piece of artwork from what I've seen behind you.
Right. And that's why I think I'm up to 85 boards now. I think the last time I counted. I think they're beautiful pieces of artwork. I really love the Ouija because that's a trademark, patented name. And like I said, these are Ouijas behind me because how they changed over the years and how the symbolism changed on them. And just because my very first board, and it's this one back here, that's my very first board I got. I know this is backwards, you guys, when I point. That's the first one I got in 1973, on December 25th. So that's, you know, one of my favorites, but I just love Ouija. Now we have talking boards and spirit boards. Do you remember, Bob, what the difference is between all those?
I do not. They are similar, right? But there's differences, as you said.
Okay.
You're the expert.
Yeah, well, let's, you know, you probably forgot this. So I want everybody to understand this. Ouija is a trademark and patented name. So technically only Ouija can use Ouija, or if they license it out. And see, Hasbro right now owns it, but they do license it out to other companies to use. A talking board is like the umbrella term, which is synonymous with spirit board, is the umbrella term to all boards. Like that blue one would be a spirit or a talking board. So Ouija is the name. So I have other boards up here that are like the Swami board, which is a 1940s board. Only Swami can use that name, Haskellite, who owns it. So that's how it works. It's like we call all tissue Kleenex. Well, tissue would be the umbrella name. Kleenex is one of the different types of tissues out there, where that's what Ouija is. So that's how it works. Yeah.
Yes. I have a really old book here from the 1950s. It's the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and Demonology.
Ooh.
It has a little bit about the witch boards in it, etc. I don't remember it all, but like I said, I've got this encyclopedia.
Oh, I see it now. Next to your ghost book. Ooh.
1959.
Nice. Oh, yeah. I've seen that book before. Okay, cool. There's a lot of different kinds of thesauruses or dictionaries out there, like you were showing, but that's one of the original old ones.
Oh yeah, that's why I grabbed it. 1959, real leather.
That's nice.
The way I see it is the older encyclopedias, they are less focused on entertainment and more focused on the historical and actual. And then that's something that I really enjoy reading.
Now, I'd be curious what that book says about talking boards or spirit boards in there. And of course, Ouija was around. They may talk about Ouija in there. I'd be curious what they would say
I'm not going to look at it right
about it.
now.
That's okay. No, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. And everybody can look at this yourself. So there's a lot of Ouija-sticians out there. Ouija-stician is a word that my colleague Gene Orlando coined, and he's actually the curator of the oldest online museum of talking boards. It's called museumoftalkingboards.com. If you guys want to look it up, museumoftalkingboards.com. Now, superstitions on there, and he coined that term because there's a lot of superstitions that are put upon the board. It's the mythology, it's the folklore, it's the tales people like to tell to spook each other, spook themselves. And then he said he decided to call it Ouija-sticians because it's all put on the Ouija. So here's a big one, and you'll see this in some books that talk about the Ouija board. They will say the Ouija board got started in ancient Greece or China. False.
Sound effects.
Yeah, you like that? So you'll see that in books, and you'll see it online, and the Talking Board Historical Society, which I'm a member of, and the founding historians, and Gina's one of them, they've done the research. There's nothing at all in history that points to a Ouija board. Now, there were different types of apparatus or apparati you could use in different cultures, throwing the stones and bones, and there was this weird pencil looking thing that would point, but it wasn't a Ouija board. Or it wasn't a talking board, I'll say, because the talking board, they all work very similarly. You have a surface, could be round like that one back there, could be square, could be rectangle. These are mostly rectangle, and some kind of apparatus that on top that moves around and that stops on the letters or the numbers. And that's what it consists of. But these other devices didn't have that. They just were other ways to do divination. So the board, as I mentioned, when we first started out, really started around 1886 with the grassroots movement. And then the official Ouija came out in 1890, hit the markets with a patent trademark in 1891.
Yes. A friend of mine, she runs paranormalforum.net. There's your plug, Debbie. She wanted me to actually ask you something about, see if I can remember it. Apparently science has come out to, and they say that they have experienced, what is it? That the multiverse surrounding us, and there's a biosphere, everything else. They're realizing there's more energy surrounding us. Consciousness, the earth itself, they're believing is conscious,
it's alive,
a sentient being.
Mm-hmm.
Are these things that you yourself or other people could communicate with via the Ouija?
Absolutely. And in fact, the book I'm working on, I've been working on for a few years now, and the research is slow, but what I'm doing is it's about being able to tap into consciousness. Any sentient being, doesn't mean they know our language, doesn't mean they communicate like you and I are doing right now, doesn't mean they even speak like this, like the guides I talk to don't even have a mouth, a voice, a brain. It's pure light consciousness. It's consciousness. Now, how do we wrap our brains around that? It's really hard for us. We're so used to saying, oh, humanity's top of the food chain and all these other beings are stupid or dumb because they don't communicate like us. Well, that's not the case. So what I have been finding is that you can tap into any sentience being, just what's called a sentience being, because the earth, I believe, is sentient. Now, not because I say so, but it's because look at you do research on this. Every single indigenous culture, old antiquity, would talk about Mother Earth being alive. And you got to say Earth is alive, things are growing and changing, Earth is changing too, but they're saying there's a awareness behind it. So you got to find a way to crack that code of awareness. Okay. And so that's what I've been working on. And I talk to anything from the trees, the vegetation. I've talked to insects. Now that's a little harder. You have to totally change your frequency to do this, and your belief system. Animals are easy, especially domestic animals or animals that we recognize. The ones that aren't so wild, they're close to humanity already, and they want to appease us. Okay, here we go. Let's go down the rabbit hole, Bob. You ready? Let's go down this rabbit hole like we have it already. All right, here we go. Dive right in. So people talk about the mythological creatures. People talk about the cryptids. All these mythological creatures that different cultures have talked about over the years, they just didn't just make this up. They existed in some form, some way. You can communicate with these creatures, although they may not be in our dimension right now, such as dragons. They like to be called dragoons. Or you can communicate with mermaids. You just got to tap into the consciousness. It's like an oversoul energy. And we do that. And you can talk to like the dolphin species or the mermaid species or the Sasquatch species, or you could go on and on and on. So I'm just going to all these different levels and layers and just seeing what message they have for humanity or what they just want to say, or what's it like in their world, you know? So it's quite fascinating. And I loved her question because that tells me, and I've heard other people talk about this, not with the Ouija board, but well, Rupert Sheldrake talks about this whole idea of just everything's consciousness. So people are beginning to reach out there and say, wait a second, I hug trees. Why do I do that? Well, because I feel a response back. That's communication. Or I love to ground myself on the earth and it makes me feel so good. Well, that's communication. It's not like, hi, how are you? But when you do start talking to these different oversouls, like the oversouls of, let's say, a palm tree, a certain type of palm tree, a fan palm, you start to get the messages they have to say, and you have interpreters that help you to understand it where you can understand it. Now we're the dumb ones. We're the dumb ones that can't understand their language. Well, it has to be brought down to our level to hear it, because we're so out of touch with our feeling base, where most of these creatures are not. They're so aware of the energies around them, and so aware, like even like birds, they just fly in a flock together, know when to swoop and dive. Fish are the same. And it's not so much that we call it a hive concept or a hive mentality. It's more than that. The dolphins, the whales, all this stuff they do, it's amazing. It's because we don't understand it, so we call it beneath ourselves. But no, everything is alive. Everything is alive, and this is pushing me to say, is everything sentient if it's alive? And so this is where I am. This is where I am with my explorations and research into it. It's all personal research, but it's also reading and studying and learning from others too.
Yes.
About this concept.
I remember back when I was a child, I used to play with my neighbors all the time. We were talking like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And one thing I found by accident, I don't know if this actually was happening or not, but this is something that I was feeling. I just was up against a tree. I felt exhausted or whatever because we had been playing for a while. And my hands touched a tree for a little while. And from the tree, I felt energy entering me from the tree.
Yeah.
And then I was no longer exhausted. It just rejuvenated me. So I thought I would try it again being a child. And I was interested in the paranormal, that kind of stuff back then. I was like, what is this? So I would do it, and I could still feel the energy from some trees. Now, I haven't done that in many years, so I don't know if that's something I can still do. But it was almost as if the trees were giving me, I don't know if it was love. I was getting tree love. How's that sound?
I love it. Tree love. That's wonderful. Tree love. You know what, Bob? It's not too late. It's time to do it again. Let the tree heal you. And you know what? I was going to tell you, so you picked up on that intuitively as a child. And by the way, a lot of us as children, we're into this stuff. We just forgot. And then we put it away and said, oh, that's pooey, or we were told not to do that kind of stuff. Well, when you talk to trees, this is what they've told me, different species of trees I've spoken to, including like cactus, because now I live in the desert in Arizona and I have a lot of like saguaro kind of trees, not trees, they're cactus. So they want to be touched. So when you touch them, they can feel your vibration. They will always remember that vibration. And it's almost as if you take a part of it with you. It's a very Native American way of thinking, like you take a part of the energy because they gave it to you. They gladly gave it to you. And so that tree gladly gave you whatever energy you needed, and your body knew what to do with it. That's communication. That's communication. Now that's where it starts, just by feeling the energies. And I ask everybody to go out there to your favorite tree, whether it's at a park or in your yard or wherever you find it, and just touch it, and maybe touch it with 2 hands. And if you feel comfortable enough, embrace it, but just see what you feel. I mean, you got to just like be there for the experience. You may walk away with nothing at first, but after a while, you're going to get something. It may just be a thought. It may just be a sensation. It maybe even be a word. That's where it starts. And then it grows from there. I get words now, and I can go up and touch my tree or touch the saguaro and hear it. And it will speak because again, a translator, because they're very advanced beings, even more so than us humans. They really are on some level. I'm not talking about the brain and all this stuff going on within our body. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about just their conscious, their awareness, and their awareness of just pure of who they are. Like it's like a love for itself and wants to share this. All these beings are very giving and very loving, especially the tree. So I can just put my hand on it and I can feel the words and they come through and it's a feeling. Then I get the messages, and they say the darndest things, interesting things. It may be related to my life. It may not be, but they each have different personalities too. So you guys try that with your trees. Okay, here's a very good example that will take it down a level, come out of the rabbit hole for a moment. Some people are really good with plants. And those people will most likely tell you, oh, I talk to my plants.
Yes.
I just know when it wants to be watered because I feel it, or I hear it, or I know it. That's the same thing. Okay, that's on a level of we're doing it already. Some of us are doing it. Or you have a pet and you just go, you could just tell what that pet wants without, I mean, dogs are kind of easy, but like cats aren't always. I usually do cats, and I have a cat right now. And, I just know what he wants and needs. And not just because I've been around him a long time. I knew it in the beginning because I'm sensitive to him. And I've been working on animal communication on and off the board for years, that I get it. Now, do I get messages from him all day long? No, it's stupid to him. It's like, let me be a cat. But when I tap into him and ask him things, he'll definitely communicate back. So be aware that it can come in different ways, different forms. Like I mentioned, when you start talking to trees or animals, or just, it's nice to be able to touch the plant, the tree, the cactus, the animal. If you can do that, then it helps you to start developing the skills. And what it is, these animals are always putting out their information. The trees are, the plants are. I'm just talking about a few species now. The information is always going out there, but are you willing to receive it? That's the key. And you start developing your own abilities to receive it. This is how the board works. I developed my own abilities to be able to feel that energy come through and the messages to form. And I could be having a conversation with somebody over here and it's still spelling and everything, because I've learned to really separate myself from it mentally and let it happen with my hand and with my partner. It's just, it's amazing the levels and degrees you can go with this when you start working with this kind of energies that I'm talking about.
Have you ever worked with the tool of the Ouija board, and then I guess with your peripheral vision, you would actually see the spirit guiding your hand, the spirit off to the side?
Never seen any of the spirit around my hand, but I'll tell you this: in sessions and with a partner or by myself or with friends that would use the board with me, yeah, they've seen things and I've seen things, but not so much there's something touching me.
Yeah.
But I can feel energy coming through, and I can feel, and I call it spirit signatures. I can tell who's coming through. I have a whole pantheon of spirits. My spirit group I've talked to, and I've developed it over the years. So when my angel comes through, her name's Mary Angel. When she comes through, it's a whole different sensation than when the guides come through, or when an oversoul of a certain signature of a certain species. It's a whole different signature. So I can tell when different beings are coming through for that reason. So I feel it. I literally feel it in my body and in my hand. Now, once in a while, I'll see things. And some I've had people be in the room that see full on apparitions that I may not see. They see it, but I've seen things where they don't necessarily see it. So it's like whatever is necessary. I really trust that process. Whatever's necessary when I'm supposed to see it, then that's when it happens. But I can feel it. So a lot of times I'll be in a space, like let's say it's like you said, a haunted place or something. I can feel it. I can feel the energies. I don't necessarily always get the words or know who it is, but I can definitely feel that change. I was just, like I was mentioning to you, I was just in Virginia at this Paracon where it was a Belgrove plantation in King George, Virginia. Fantabulous. Fantabulous. Like I put words together. Fantabulous place. Lot of action, a lot of activity, spiritually. What happened to me, I was put up at what they have like four rooms there. And 4 of us speakers were put up into separate rooms, and I had my own room, and this room was called, I believe it was called the Connor room. Anyway, each room was named after one of the families that owned this plantation over the years. This plantation goes back as far as before the Revolutionary War. This is how old. I know it's been rebuilt and remodeled and stuff like that, and but that's what stood there. It's several hundred years, 250 years, whatever the years are now. So the room I was staying in, it was supposed to be haunted by cats, like they're cat ghosts. I didn't see any cat ghosts, didn't feel any cat ghosts, but I was walking into the room one day. Somebody was using my room. It was another speaker. I said, "Go, you could use my room to get ready." She was getting ready to do a presentation. I said, "When you're done, come downstairs. I'll go back upstairs and lock it." So I went back upstairs to go lock it. I walk through the threshold and I hear clear as a bell, a woman's voice right here in my ear and saying, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And it was a whisper, but it was definitely outside. Now I get messages in terms of my guides coming through, it'll be an internal hearing. But when I hear like spirits, like people at a transition, it's usually external. I don't think I've ever heard it internal. It's external, unless we're working on channeling. So it was there. And I was asking my friend, "Are you still in here? Are you still in here?" She's like, "Nobody's in there." I walk out and I see one of my colleagues sitting in a chair around the corner. I said, "Did anybody just walk by? Did anybody say anything?" He's like, "No, I've just been sitting here on my computer." And I said, "Well, did Jessica leave?" He said, "Well, she already walked out a while back." And I go, "Yeah, I know. I saw her downstairs." So I will hear auditorially EVPs. I don't necessarily need to record them. When something's strong and it's there. And so then I didn't mention it to anybody else. When the whole program was over, I was talking to the woman who produced the event. And she said, "Oh, after you guys left, I went to stay in your room. I decided to stay there for a few days later, and I went and stayed in your room." And she said, she goes, "The craziest thing was," she said, "I saw standing at the threshold, like where I walked in the room, a woman standing there, and it was Mrs. I think her name was Connors, is one of the owners." She goes, "I saw her. She goes, I saw this apparition, and I wanted to go through all the photos." She went through all the photos. She goes, "That's her." And sure enough, that was the woman that the room was named after. And I said, "Well, what's weird about that is that she said to me in my ear, 'I'm sorry.'" And she said, "Well, that's interesting. She felt horrible because she left that place in a disrepair. By the time she died, it was in just a horrible state. The new owners had to really fix it up." And I think when she told me that story, I said, "That's it. She's feeling really badly that she left this place because it's a beautiful plantation in such disrepair." So things like that happen. That's a small thing, but it's just trying to say to people that we all have these abilities to hear, to feel, and the Ouija board is kind of my tool. But you could do this stuff without the board. Everything I'm talking about.
I used to be able to do that, but then I closed myself off. Some people do that. We would close ourselves off. It got to the point where I just had to, because I would have all sorts of entities coming to me. I mean, I could be trying to sleep. They'd be quite literally. One night, we just moved over to, I guess I was 13 years of age. So we just moved somewhere, and I heard a knocking outside my bedroom window. It was probably 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. Just a knocking. I was like, "What is that?" So I looked, and it looked like a person sideways waving at me.
Oh my gosh.
And I just I don't know what that is. I'm not going to open up the blinds and look at it. I'll figure it out. I just thought maybe it was a tree, right? It could just be a tree, but it never happened again. Never happened again. Another thing that happened to me at the old house is I went to bed. Everybody goes to bed on a mattress, right? Just a mattress.
Yeah.
And when I woke up, the mattress was on the floor. I was still on the bed. I was on the bot springs. My mattress was on the down floor. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
Now, have you ever had any kind of extraterrestrial activity?
Yes. Back when I was a child, according to my brother, I don't remember much of it. It's almost like a shattered mirror, what I remember. My brother was 8 years older than I am. He is, I should say. And like a lot of siblings, we stayed in the same bedroom together, the same bed. And the one thing I do remember is floating through a wall. And then the next thing I remember is waking up right beside of him. And we were positioned in a way that we would never see. He was on my side, I was on his side. And I asked him, Bubba, why did you let them take me? And years later, like maybe it was 5 years ago, we started talking about that, and we both thought it was a dream. And my
Mhm.
mother stepped in and she said, well, you had told me that they came and got you. I just thought it was angels.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of weird shit happen to me. Excuse my language.
It's your show.
Hey, it's your
It's your
show too.
show. You can do it too. Okay, great. I love hearing these stories because when we start talking about the stuff, people will say, well, there was this one time, there was this experience, you just got to ask the question. And for me, because everything's visual with the Ouija board, you see it and you go, oh, I got to tell you about that sleepover I did, or that one time in college, or this happened, so everybody has a story to tell. And it's not so much the story, it's the fact that we all have these abilities to use so much more of our inherent proclivities that we're born with. And I'm talking about the clairsenses, like being able to have clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. There's like, I think 8 or 9 of them, different ways to sense things on a hyper level where it's like seeing with x-ray vision or something. We all have that ability. And really, if you look at the light spectrum, we see this much of it, and the light spectrum might be, if you're just listening to the show, I'm showing like 3 feet away, and then we might only see, a few inches in the middle of that light spectrum.
Yes.
And so does that mean that doesn't exist out there? No, we've proven it exists. It's just that we don't have these abilities, meaning our senses that we were given, like our outwardly senses, like our eyes and our nose and our ears to hear and all that stuff, and our mouth, taste, touch. But there's these other senses that we come with, and we're tapping into them. So a lot of times, remember this stuff as dreams, especially with visitations at night. You'll remember it as a dream, whether it's a transition person or it's a extraterrestrial or interdimensional or ultra dimensional. There's so many different types of levels and layers to this. So we tend to remember it like a dream, and that's because it's safer for us, and because it's so outwardly strange. How else can we explain this? And the other piece of it is too, when we are sleeping, we're less inhibited by our thinking mind, because our thinking mind takes over, and then it kind of represses and suppresses the creative part of your brain, the part of you that's able to access these abilities, these intuitive, empathic, psychic, mediumistic abilities. And so when you're sleeping, it's much easier to tap into it. And I find that's when a lot of people do have their experiences from sleep, whether they're visitations of loved ones who've moved on, or pets, or even the extraterrestrials. So it's really crazy when it starts happening when you're wide awake. And that happens to me often too. Like just that example I had just a few weeks ago. I'm sorry. I'm not sleeping. I'm like wide awake, getting ready to do a presentation. I'm wide awake. There was nothing sleepy there. So, but when you're open to it, and I'm so open to this stuff now that I will get messages a lot. The other thing I was going to say about that, Bob, when you mentioned how you used to do this all the time, and then you had to shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so. A lot of people feel that way. And I did it one time too. I was told to shut it down as a kid because I was going to go to school, and you can't tell people you see things that aren't there, or you see weird lights. And I thought, okay, I can't. But a lot of times what we'll do is we will, we think we're shutting it down at a certain age, and then it comes back to us maybe later on in our life. But what I want to say is this. I used to get a lot of visitation from different entities and energies too. I had no idea how to even work with it. And when I started learning about this more and more, it was like in the 80s and 90s, I started realizing there is free will, and I have a choice here. And what that choice is I could set up my own boundaries. And you do the boundaries with light work. I did a lot. I started taking a lot of classes on how to protect myself, how to ground myself, how to put light around myself, and not even realizing what I was doing. It was just taking these courses because it sounded pretty cool. And then developing, like through yoga and Qigong, and developing my body, my meridians and senses, and then taking some psychic courses too. Because what it did is I realized that I would take something from here and something from there, and stuff I was reading and researching. And I just kind of created my own system, which said, okay, now I'm going to allow all this work to come back. I always did the Ouija board, but being able to see things and hear things, and being able to be more open to it. It's like the trees and all that stuff. It's like I put boundaries up where the boundaries are this. Here it is, you guys. When I'm sleeping in my bedroom, you don't come and wake me up. If I wake up my own, that's a whole different story, but nobody's going to come in here and bother me unless I invite you. And I allow them to come in dreams, but not just to show up where I'm going to go, shocking kind of thing. So you can do it. You can start setting up boundaries. But the thing is this, you guys, like with the board, you've got to believe that you establish these boundaries. Your belief is everything. Your belief, which filters into your intentions, is everything.
Yes. I remember my wife and I bought this house that we're in right now in December 2004. When we first moved in, this happened for almost an entire year. I would have this same exact reoccurring dream. It was almost a nightmare. Let me just say this. I would see a person, apparently, I don't know how I was seeing this, walking up the street, coming to our door, banging on the door, let me in, let me in. And I would go toward the door, look at the person. I wouldn't let the person in. And then they would actually force themselves through the door, not breaking the door, but going through the door. I said, let me in. For almost a year, I had that same reoccurring dream. I don't know what that was about. It
Really?
was not peaceful. Let me just say that. It was not
it's like an intruder almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, okay, so when I work with people with dreams, I would say, what do you feel? And because we're not going to be doing therapy on Bob Bain tonight.
Well, we might be. Let's try it.
Well, people come to me a lot. I do readings, and people come to me a lot to help them work with their dreams. This is one of those things I'm just good at doing. I love dream imagery. I love everything about the dream.
I don't know, Bob. Let me tell you this.
Up to 6 dreams a night, I can remember.
When we moved in, we had all sorts of experiences. I would go to work at night. Back in those days, I was working at a hotel. So I was doing the night audit shift, and my wife woke up one night and she saw a shadow person. She at first thought it was me. And then she realized, oh, Bob's still at work. Who is that? And it scared her. But she turned on the light. Nobody was there.
Yeah.
And she told me that as soon as I came home. We both had experiences in this house. I've had an experience where when I started doing this podcast back in 2013, I was upstairs close to the attic, and I was talking to a person who claimed to have been possessed by a demon. And I didn't believe it. I was just calling it, I'm not sure I believe it. And then as we were talking, something threw a 20-pound container down the attic steps.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It hit it hard. I mean,
it gets real when that happens.
20-something pounds. So I don't know if it just decided, I'll show you I'm real, or what was happening. But I've had all sorts of experiences. Some things I wish I did not have, which I'm sure you probably are the same way. There's some experiences you just wish you never had.
Yeah. And I think too, especially when you're younger too, or I'll just put it this way, young as a child, it can be scary. And even as an adult, we have no frame of reference for it. And things like that, something's thrown a 20-pound container down a stair and nothing else is up there. That's definitely to get your attention. And to me, that would be creepy and scary. I would immediately go to the guides and I would talk to them and try to figure out what's going on here, or could they help give me some insight? Is there something's getting my attention? That's like that reoccurring dream. Something was trying to get your attention, and until it gets your attention, it's going to keep repeating until you finally get it. Whatever that is, whether it's some inner thing you're working out on your own, or whether it's really like a spirit. I mean, it could be a little bit of everything. A deceased transition person who might have been with the house, or knows you're there and you have the ability to hear it, or it could be a projection of yourself in the dream saying, something's changing. Here I come. Get ready. And pay attention. That's what you got to look at. So I always say, how do you feel about the dream? That gives you some clues. And then what do you think before somebody else tells you what it is? No, you don't want anybody to tell you what it means. So that's fascinating. I have had some reoccurring dreams myself. And I heard that, that's a theme a lot of people will get, a certain, not necessarily your theme, but the theme of reoccurring dreams till you get the message.
Yeah. One thing I do, if I feel there's a negative entity or negative energy whatsoever that's threatening me, I'm not necessarily as religious as I used to be, but I will just call out to a entity, a god or whatever, and ask for protection.
Yeah.
Almost every time I do that, I get this feeling of euphoria coming across me, energy,
Ah, nice.
almost as though, I mean, it is flowing from the top of my head down to my spine. I could literally feel it when I do that. And
Yeah,
I'm just at peace at that point.
that's what it takes. So fear attracts more fear, right? We start pulling in that energy, we get all worked up, it's going to pull in that same, going to keep, bringing that, constellating that energy to you. Or if you can find a way to get the relaxation, as you just mentioned, through your whole body, that changes your frequency, that changes your resonance, that changes what you're going to be able to allow into that space and not into that space.
I wonder when a person does that, or when I do that, if I'm actually communicating with a guardian angel, let's just say, or if I'm just changing the frequency myself around me.
Hmm.
I mean, that's
If
something
it
to think about.
if it works, maybe it doesn't matter that you'd have the full answer or you think you know the answer. I mean, we're postulating here, I just know things that I've heard from different spirit guides, but everybody has their own experience based upon their own life, perceptions and filters and how they see the world. So I'm sharing it from my perspective. I've had that experience before, and it has been before calling in a higher energy power to come through. And it's also been me shifting my inner power within. So it could be maybe a little bit of both. And maybe because you believe in and you're willing to receive a higher energy, that you're able to constellate that within yourself. I think it's a little bit of both sometimes, And that's what religion does for people, or spirituality. It gives them faith. And it's like having that faith and that energy helping you is going to do wonders to make that energy really work.
Yes. My mom once told me, now I don't know how reliable she is. I'm just going to say, I don't know how reliable mothers are. But my mom told me that when I was a baby, just brought home from the hospital, she was in bed sleeping with me, and Dad was there, and she saw an old man walking through the bedroom door. Just an old man walking through. He looked down at me and told her that I was protected. And
Oh.
then later on in my life, probably 3 or 4 years of age, right before I was abducted by aliens, I had seen what I guess I would call Jesus had come to me. Didn't say anything to me at all, scared the bejesus out of me. We were at the Kmart parking lot. I remember it was nighttime, and I just hid my head. I was crying. Mom asked me, "What's happening? What's wrong?" Jesus is out there. He's looking at me. And my brother apparently had seen it too. And then within next year or two, I was abducted by aliens. All these things happened to me. And some people have told me, which you might have heard before as well, stop making up this stuff. You are saying all these things happened to you. If it was one thing, I might believe it. Two things, but all these things you're saying that happened to you, it can't be real, but it is. Sometimes I wish it wasn't, because it's definitely screwed up my life to a point. As long as I'm willing to accept it, it's fine. It's normal.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I heard this from a lot of people when I travel around and talk at conventions. A lot of people have experiences and are willing. I think now it's more apropos, or it's okay to talk about it. I mean, with all these shows on TV now, and I mean, this shows started coming out in the 80s and 90s, some of these like, unanswered, mystery kinds of shows. That talked about like Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or aliens. But now we got these ghost shows, and people are saying, a lot of people are believing in this. It's really gone up in numbers in terms of the people that believe that there's so many more experiences beyond what we think. And so with that comes an openness to be able to really process it more so and talk about it. So a lot of people are talking and saying, gosh, that happened. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Like kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yes.
That happened. And then you go, but wait, it was scary, but now I can see it differently, as I mentioned. So I had a lot of experiences. I would see beings a lot as a child, and they would come when I was sleeping, and 95% were just fantastic, lovely. I felt the greatest warmth, but I had these little beings that looked like little extraterrestrials, little grays. and they would came to me. It was like a dream, and they would chase me, and I was always trying to get away from them. And then I started seeing them as an adult. And at that point, I realized they weren't scary anymore. They were scared because I didn't understand. It was back in the 70s and early 70s. And it was just, there was no frame of reference. There was nothing on TV talking about this. There was no shows back then talking about this phenomenon. And I was just alone with it. And they said, "Oh, you're making it up." But I was literally scared. And I had to deal with that through the years. But then when I started empowering myself by learning, like I mentioned, I took a lot of courses and started doing, like, I did past life regression. I did like light therapy. I did yoga. I was telling you all these different things I started studying. I mean, I just did everything under the sun just to really learn about these dimensions and about myself within them. And so when I started doing that, I found myself getting empowered. And then I started realizing, oh, it was scary because I nobody believed me, number one. If and I felt like they were chasing me. And yes, that's what the experience was. It's not to denounce that experience, but to say now it's when I have an experience of these other beings that come, there's a whole another level of interaction. There's a level of empowerment. You can't just come my space. You're not going to abduct me. Things start changing as you shift yourself. And so I really encourage people, if they're having these experiences, just start thinking about them again. Start sharing them with people. Learn to empower yourself. I call it finding your center, and that could be grounding, learning protection, learning to develop that light within you that can fill your body and fill your space, so you are like in a bubble. I mean, there's so many different techniques that can happen, and then start approaching this again, because there's so much out there that we're not told about, or that's been hidden from us, and some of it was done on purpose, I believe. And when I say that, it's not so much by the spirit beings, it's by our ruling factions, whether it's religion or government or society or culture, and parents, they're just trying to do the best to protect you, and they don't want you to cry and be scared. But if you can start going in that direction, being more open, but finding your way to get your center while you're talking about it, while you're exploring it, I think you're going to find that it's okay to open up to these realms. I always say, when I go about this dimensional work, multidimensional work that I do with the board, it's like I start with that place of, how do I feel within myself? Am I centered? Am I grounded? Am I comfortable? Am I feeling, true to my inner strength? And then I start doing the work. And once I get in that space, it's like you said, the energy flows over you and you feel really good. I get in that space first. Then I start doing this work, and I see it as like exploration or discovery. I see it as exciting. And if I keep that same energy level, or that way of thinking about it, perceiving it, that's what I'm met with every single time. And I can prove that on the board, because that's what I've met with on the board every single time, and other kinds of explorations. I want to say one more thing about spirit. We're talking about whether it's deceased ghosts, that kind of thing, apparition ghost, our loved ones who's transitioned. Spirit's non-local. So I don't necessarily need to be in that haunted location to contact what's there. And I've done quite a few experiments of that nature where I make contact with the place before I go there, and just see what I feel. And I get messages or sensations, or a reference point. And I go there and I go, "Oh, that's what I was getting. That's what I was seeing. Oh, that makes sense now." And that's why you can talk to your loved ones. Let's say you moved, and let's say your dad lives somewhere else. He can still come to you and talk to you in this space, because spirit in the other dimensions is non-local. That means it's not contained by space and time that we have in this dimension.
Yes. When my dad passed, he actually came to me. I guess it
Ah,
was it was always in a dream, but I actually wrote down the communications. I don't exactly know what they are, but the last one was, I went to his house, or to my mom's house, and there he was sitting in his chair on the phone, looking happy. He said, "I don't know if you heard, but I died." He said, "I- I'm I wasn't feeling that well, but now I'm doing great." And one time before then, I actually saw him at the grocery store where he's from, and I saw him. "Hey, it's Dad." Walked over to him, and we walked over to wherever, just talking, and then I woke up. But essentially,
Mhm.
he just wanted me to know that he's doing fine. He's feeling better than he has in a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially if they die of like cancer or something that takes a while to die, or there's a pain or something associated with it.
Yeah.
It does take a little bit. They're telling me this is what they always tell me. There's a little bit of recovery time, but it's like such a sense of freedom from pain and anything that was holding them back, especially if they had that cancer when they're dying or something like
Yeah.
that.
He for 6.5 years he was on dialysis because his kidney failed him.
Yeah, that's tough. That and dealing with that kind of pain. And then which yeah, that's great. I'm so
Yeah.
you needed to hear that message too. That's beautiful.
But the first time any type of communication I got from him was actually in real life. I had didn't have him on my mind, didn't have music on my mind, anything else. And then all of a sudden, no radio was on. All of a sudden, I heard music, and it
Mm.
was the George Strait song. Let me tell you something about a father's love.
Oh, I love that song. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, beautiful.
essentially, it started out. Last night I dreamed I died and stood outside the pearly gate. When suddenly I realized there must be some mistake. If they realized all the stuff I've done or whatever it was, they'll never let me in. And then I heard these words on the other side. Let me tell you the story of a father's love.
Mm.
And then he started to appear to me right after
Oh,
that.
nice. That's great. It's a great story, and that must give you some sense of peace about
Oh,
it.
it did. It did,
Mhm.
especially when I saw him afterwards. Now, I haven't seen him since, not since the year he died. It's like he has transitioned and he's at peace now, which is fine by me.
Well, it sounds like you're at peace too. And so maybe there's not a need right now for him to come to you.
That is true. A lot of people, I think that's something that I can be here for. People like you can be here for. There's a lot of people out there right now who are suffering.
Mhm.
People who have lost loved ones, especially with mass shootings.
Yeah.
A lot of people have died. Children, my God, children obliterated. I, I can't even, I just can't understand how people could do that to anyone, especially children.
Mm.
Like I said, I helped raise a little girl from the time she was just in her mother's belly. Her mother and I met in high school, senior year high school. I helped raise her for 7 years of her life. Um, she was abused by one of her mother's husbands. Um, uh, what was it? 2 weeks after her 20th birthday, she hanged herself.
Mm.
2 weeks after her 20th birthday, she hanged herself. And like I said, in 2016, on Mother's Day, her mother hanged herself. There's a
So
lot
much
of pain
pain.
out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
too
so
much
much
pain.
pain. Mhm.
People don't know how to heal.
That's right.
Is there something that you can tell us on how a person can heal themselves from whatever's ailing them, whether it's sexual abuse as a child or the loss of a child? How do they heal?
Well, but my background's a therapist, and I've dealt with this for many years with people and in my own life, Um, all of us have hardships, and the most important thing to do is to reach out, to find somebody you can talk to, a number you can call, whether it's a hotline, your clergy, your best friend, your father, your mother, whoever you can trust. And if you're in a situation where you're being abused at home, if you can reach out to maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's somebody outside the house and get help that way. But the thing is, you need your voice to be heard. And you need to acknowledge it and not just try to suck it in and go, oh, this will go away. Because I can tell you right now, if you've been abused physically, emotionally, um, sexually, on all these different levels of abuse, it's deep seated and deep rooted. It will stay with you. It will manifest and fester. So number one is to not stay silent and to find a place to reach out. Number two, you can't do this alone. Can't. Just can't. It's going to be hard. And number three, tomorrow is always another day. And I think when people get to the point of being suicidal, they're thinking there are no options, there's no way out, and they're isolated. And the pain is so great, there's nowhere to turn. And so all they do is they turn it onto themselves.
Mm.
And so I will tell you this. I've had suicidal patients I've worked with and who have committed suicide in hospitals that I knew. And also I've known people, a few, who have taken their own life. And I'll tell you this, two of them came back to me. These aren't clients or patients. These are people I actually knew like as friends years ago. They came to me and both of them in their own time said, I made the biggest mistake. I can't believe I did this. I'm so ashamed. And I find that the pain continues and it's still, they're still trying to get through it. Are they forgiven? Yes. But I'm just saying, it's like that pain they have, it's still like they're holding on to that shame. So it's really never the answer when you're alive. And I'll say this too, as the past life therapist as well, when people take their life, they're going to come back and start repeating those same lessons over again. It'll just be in another body, another form, but it's like chapter 2. It's like, here we go again. So it's good to work it through. But if you can follow those 3 steps of, number 1, reaching out, number 2, you're not alone. And number 3, there's always tomorrow, another day. And if you can remember that then you have hope. Then you have hope that things can change.
Yes. It is best to heal yourself here and now if you're able to, because when you're in the other life, like you said, especially if you commit suicide, that pain continues. You're not escaping it. You need to find a way to heal now.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. I get it. It's easier said than done.
Absolutely. I mean, life is messy. It is. Life is messy, and life is going to be not smooth sailing for anybody. I don't care what anybody says. There's something going on. And if they say they've had just such a great life, they're in denial about something. Life has its ups and downs. Life is messy. And especially right now, I got to say this, Bob, because I do a lot of readings. What I'm getting a lot in the energy right now, you can look at what's going on in the world on every level. You mentioned some of the mass shootings and all that. And we can talk about the disease, COVID, all this stuff and what's going on just with the, we're seeing the underbelly of humanity. So we're seeing this and there's a disclosure that's happening. And along those lines, we're being asked to really look at ourselves, to really take a deep dive. And how I see it coming up in my sessions is people are speaking up about what's bothering them and what's paining them. I also see it as opportunities for people to say, well, I'm quitting my job. I can't do that anymore. I'm not going to accept that. I've got this I'm doing now, or I need to go in a new direction, or they're starting to be pushed to move, literally move, or to change jobs, or to leave a marriage. There's a lot of those people with 30-year marriages that are getting divorced. I'm not saying that's the answer, but I'm saying I'm seeing a lot of great change. That's what's happening. Yes. Great change. And that is what allows us to really also heal the psyche of humanity, which we are all a part of. And as we start healing ourselves, each other, what happens is all of us start going up to another level of evolution and awakening. Yes. And this is what I see is happening. So this conversation we're having is very timely on many levels. I'll just say that.
There's something I've been noticing. Now, I don't know if this is something you've noticed as well. This is the way I feel. I've noticed that around us, all the negativity from everywhere, the school shootings, the January the 6th insurrection, whatever you might want to call it, all the hatred, the anger, it's been bubbling up. It's like a volcano. And eventually, all this is going to, some people think it's already erupted. It hasn't erupted yet. We're just facing the buildup right now. Mm. What's going to happen? What do you think might happen when this super volcano actually does erupt?
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I don't feel that we've hit the full peak of it. We've definitely seen the wounds of it, the festering of it. If it's a volcano, we're seeing some of the lava come out. We're seeing some of the steam, but we haven't seen the full blow. And again, this is what I think is going to happen. Everything's going to change and drastically. Again, in your life, I'm not saying, oh, suddenly the world is Armageddon. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is it's going to feel like that in your life. It's like, oh my God, I'm being asked to do that. Oh my God, my husband just left me after 30 years. I'm telling you, I'm seeing this already. And so everybody's going to have their own personal blow up or their own personal major change, or their own personal uncovering something and seeing the underbelly. This is a time, if you want to use the words, come to Jesus. This is a time of really coming to the truth and seeing the truth within yourself. And you might, and making amends with it. And you might just find, I'm not going to say might, if you could see this from a greater perspective, is what I can see when I do readings for people. If you can see from a larger picture, greater perspective, you will see that you're going to be better off for it. But a lot of more things are going to be disclosed, are going to fall apart. This has to happen as humanity evolves. This process started, what I understand from my insiders,
Exactly.
since 1987. I mean, really, okay, everything is cyclical. Everything repeats itself. But where we are in this cycle right now, for our day and age, really in 1987 with the harmonic convergence. It wasn't 2012 with the Mayan calendar. That was the Mayan saying, yes, a big change has happened. Not that the world ended. It's just like we're in another phase. And the harmonic convergence was really people acknowledging that there's an energy out there that's really transitioning. So we've been undergoing this for a long time. And you can look back in history and see a lot of these different changes and shifts. And now we can start putting the pieces together. But where I feel like we're going is really more of an acceptance. Eventually we'll get there, of the individual. And not this have to be group speak or think or fear what you say or how you do it. It's all going to come full circle. And we're going to have more of freedoms. Let's call it that. A respect of free will. But we got to go through some turmoil to get there. And I'm with you. We aren't quite there yet. The years I'm getting, it's 2023 feels like it's going to be very, what do I want to say? Expansive in terms of really seeing even more of the things we've been hiding in the world. We've been hiding from ourselves. That means your own personal world and the world at large. But by 2024, 2025, I feel like there's going to be, the disclosure is going to be there. And I say disclosure, like really going to understand what's been going on in the world. We're really going to understand what's been going on in the governments and where we've been lied to or mistreated. And at that point, there'll be some massive change. So I see it more like 2024, 2025. So
now we're going to go here in just a minute, but I want to ask you something because there's something that's been on my mind for a long time. I am a human, as you can tell. At least I might be an alien in a human body. Who knows?
That's true.
You are a human.
Right.
But over the years, I've actually began to realize something about us. We are parasites. We are parasites on this planet. We destroy everything. We eat the meat of animals surrounding us. We pay no honor or tributes to nature. We destroy every single thing. We just, oh yeah. And we take the oil out of the ground. The earth, you know, something I've always wondered here, does the earth also need the oil, the lubricants that we're taking from it? We are taking all the resources out of the earth. And what else does that? A parasite. We are the greatest parasite on this planet. So would this planet be better off without humans? And could it be working against us now because it is so pissed off?
That's an interesting point. Well, you think about it too. We have all kinds of parasites within us.
Yes, we do.
I mean, inside our bodies, and it's some of it's necessary, and some of it gets out of control and makes it sick. You know, with the gut disorders and stuff like that. So,
one's going to pop out of me right now, big old alien,
like an alien. So that's an interesting way of looking at it. I think we're moving more into a place after this great change and shift that we're in, and we're going to get to the pinnacle. We're almost there. We're going to see us be more respectful of each other and ourselves. One of the things that when I communicate with extraterrestrials, different species of extraterrestrials, and they don't really like to be called extraterrestrials because to them we're extraterrestrials, but they're just another type of being. And what they say is like, yeah, you know what? It's hard for us to come there and show ourselves. Everybody's like, when are we going to have a disclosure of aliens? Well, the problem is this: we're going to either look up to them as gods, right? Or we're going to want to kill them, capture them, shoot them, you know,
or eat them.
And probably eat them, right? See, I'm a vegetarian. So I don't eat. I haven't had it since for 20. It's I'm 30. How many years? 40, 30? Wow. No. How old am I?
I don't know. How old are you?
36 years.
You're 36 years old, right?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so for 36 years, I haven't eaten animals. I just can't. I can't. a lot of reasons why, but it was both because I didn't like the way meat tasted when I was younger, but I realized I came into the world that way because I talked to them. They're all very sentient and very conscious and very much aware. So that's a whole nother story. We don't have to go there. I don't disrespect people who do eat meat. We all have free will and choices. So I never judge people for that reason. But for me, doesn't work. So yeah, we're gonna realize how to get along with Earth better. It's coming. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it. As we wake into our own truths, we can't help but respect and treat everybody else with respect that they have their own truths too. And I'm not talking about the truth like universal truth. I'm talking about our own personal ways of doing things, our own ways of going about the world. We're going to have a lot more tolerance for that.
Yes. I think it may eventually be like, what was it? Avatar. When the entire planet was at stake, when the humans were trying to destroy, what was it? The sacred tree.
Oh, it was horrible. Yes.
Yeah. Mother Nature got all the animals together, like, let's kill those assholes. Yeah.
Yep. Well, nature has a way of striking back.
Yes, they do.
We've seen it. So trust Mother Nature on that level. And you know what? If we can just be a little more kinder to if we're gentler with ourselves and kinder to ourselves first, we're going to find it's easier to do that to others. So that's where it really has to start. It has to start by cleaning. Here, I always like to say, sweeping your own back porch, cleaning your own house. That's where it starts. And then the world starts shifting because we're all beginning to change the energy. You shift the energy within yourself. You're help shift the energy of humanity, of the humanity's psyche, which is what we're all comprised of, which you can call the matrix. You can call it all that is. It's like, and just having these conversations brings us more awareness too, to be more responsible for how we show up and interact within the world.
Yes. Speaking about, what is it, that you don't eat meat. I actually have a group of friends. They're older ladies. They're the Ghostbuster gals. I don't know if you've ever heard of them before, but
I love it.
They have a bunch of chickens, and they were telling about what their favorite chickens are, the breed, etc. And then I was like, yeah, I actually have a favorite chicken too. They're really? Yes, I do. What is it? KFC.
I knew you were going to say Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
well,
man.
I'll tell you what, they're eating fresh eggs. One of my brothers used to raise chickens just for the eggs. And I was eating some eggs back then because it's amazing how the fresh eggs really do taste.
Oh, yes, that is true. Well, Karen, I definitely appreciate you coming on there with me this evening. It took us a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
We had a little technical difficulties in the beginning, you guys. We tried that eCam, and I have a different eCam version than you have, so I didn't know how to help you with that. And then here we are on Zoom, and so apologize to all you guys for being late. But better late than never, right?
You were on time. I was late.
We even did a sound check, you guys, 15 minutes beforehand. It's okay. It's been an absolute pleasure. We shouldn't let 5 years go by until the next time.
We should do something in October at some point. Maybe something with the Ouija board. I don't know what, but I'm up for it, I guess.
Let's chat.
All right. Have a good night, Karen.
Good night to you. Bye.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for joining
before
us.
you go, what's your website for the people?
Oh, I have something to share too. So my website, you can go to KarenADahlman.com. I do want to tell you, I have this event coming up on July 27th. It's a Zoom event, and it's through Lilydale. Lilydale is one of the very first spiritualist communities in the United States. And I want to give you a little QR code. If you want to stop the video, snap that right there with your phone. It'll take you directly to the link where you can sign up. It's a 2-hour Zoom. I'm going to go deep dive into the Ouija board, all the history. I just smidgened on it tonight, just touched it. And I'm going to get into the people who use it, how they use it, how it affected pop culture, what's it doing now in the world, all these cool things about the board. 2 hours, $20. That's very inexpensive. We kept the prices low so a lot of people can afford, and you can join us from around the world. Again, it's July 27th this month, 2022. And I hope to see you guys there. So come on out and join me. Yes. Thanks again, Bob. Really
and actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to edit that part of the video, and I'm going to put it into the very beginning before the show even starts.
Oh, all right.
It's almost like a little ad.
Yay. We like
promo,
ads.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people want to see me when I speak, and I'm traveling all over the place, but this is a great way to do it. You can interact with me. I'll be taking questions and stuff and comments and things of that nature. So it's a great time to come on out.
I love your background, by the way, like I said.
Love my
It's so
boards.
nice. The only thing I got back here, like I said, is Dean Koontz. I love Odd Thomas, the Odd Thomas series of books. Stephen King, A Ghost Encyclopedia, and whatever
Yep,
else.
Hans Holzer. Yeah, you need to get a board maybe back there.
Hey, I might get that one that costs $666, the serial killer
Okay,
one.
hang it up and see what happens in your house.
And my wife will kill me.
Right. That'll be a whole different type of interview.
Well, Karen, have a good night. I'll let you
Thank
know
you.
when this is up and running.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Karen A. Dahlman. And I am Bob Bain, your curator of mysteries. Now, again, this is the Mysterious Matters program. Until the next time we come back together again, I bid you all a kind farewell.